Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. Our talk for Snowflake Build is going to be around building agentic workflows using the dbt MCP server and Snowflake. Who do you have here with you today? My name's Sara Gawlinski. I'm a technical product marketing manager over at dbt Labs.
I'm Jason Ganz. I'm the Senior Manager of Developer Experience and AI at dbt Labs.
From about 2016 to 2023, we saw the modern data stack emerge to help organizations transform raw data into trustworthy and usable insights. It gave us reliable pipelines, governed metrics, and scalable transformation workflows. Basically, everything data teams needed to build confidence in what they were measuring, reporting, and making decisions on. But times have changed, right? And data practitioners, I mean, all of us really are now faced with widespread AI adoption and are left to tackle what might feel like a familiar set of challenges, right? And these challenges have resurfaced in new forms and have been shaped by new technologies. So what do I mean by this? In like the modern data stack, we ask questions like, can I trust the data behind this dashboard? Are we all using the same definition of revenue? How do I scale my models and keep everything in sync as teams grow? And now we're in this AI era. So those questions haven't really disappeared. They've simply evolved. So now they sound more like, can I trust the answer that an AI system gives me? How do I know that it's grounded in the right metric or logic? And then how do I manage dozens, if not, hundreds of models, agents, and prompts across all of these workflows without losing control? And the truth is, AI is running into the exact same problems that the modern data stack has, already sought out to solve: reliability, governance, scalability, access, and safe automation. And that's where the Model Context Protocol, or MCP, comes in. MCP acts as this standardized bridge between these two eras, connecting AI systems to the trusted data models, definitions, and workflows that we've already spent a lot of resources and time building. It brings the discipline and governance of the modern data stack into this new world of intelligent systems so we can move faster without sacrificing trust. So MCP is this model context protocol. It's an open source standard by Anthropic that lets AI applications talk to external systems in a consistent and governed way. It follows a client server architecture pattern, and you can think of it as like a universal adapter so that any host like Claude Desktop or Cursor can use to connect to one or more MCP servers. So why does this matter? It gives us a few things, right? Interoperability is one. So being able to swap hosts or servers without kind of rewiring anything. Um, Permissioning is another. So having kind of this one policy model that governs access everywhere to anyone. And then auditability, so that every request and response is typed and logged. That's what makes it safe enough for enterprise data and AI to meet. And then each server in the MCP ecosystem can kind of expose three different capabilities. First being tools. So these are executable functions that these AI applications can actually invoke to perform actions. So, think of, running an API call or a database query. Second would be resources. So these are like the data sources that actually provide the context to the AI system. Things like file contents, records, or the query results. And then third is prompts. So we can think of these as reusable templates that help structure how AI interacts with language models. And then together, these three form a very stable interface for AI systems to work with your trusted tools and data without breaking governance. So you don't really need a custom adapter for each AI app anymore. They all simply speak MCP. That's where dbt comes in. So earlier this year, we released the dbt MCP server. So this server connects everything that you already trust in your dbt project to an AI-enabled client. So you can kind of think of it as this glue layer. AI asks a question, and the dbt MCP server maps that to the right bit of context. So your models, your metrics, any of your job details, takes that, compiles what's needed, and then returns structured and reliable results. So really bringing more than just vibes to your analytics code. And with the dbt MCP server, you kind of have two different options when it comes to how you deploy it. So the first being local, and this is pretty self-explanatory. It runs on your laptop right alongside your dbt project. This is a perfect option for local development with something like Cursor or Claude, since it ensures that the code that you're writing locally matches what the agent has access to. And then the second is to run it remotely. So with the dbt MCP server running it remotely, it actually is hosted in the dbt platform, and then your clients connect to it over the network. So definitely a little bit easier to, set up, maintain, and manage, because it's already running in the dbt platform. And these remote servers open avenues to different AI experiences, because they can do more, right? They can enable long-running, multi-user, multi-tenant agents, and then can even be accessed by web applications. So definitely something to kind of keep in mind as you're evaluating your use cases and what you want to use something like the dbt MCP server for to kind of map it to the right deployment option. And then, why use something like the dbt MCP server? I think you can kind of tie it to this example. So, this example kind of highlights the current challenges when using something like an LLM, and applying that to a data use case specifically. So when you ask some like an LLM, like, hey, what is the capital of California? It'll give you the output of Sacramento. And it knows this because it has, been set up with all of this training data. So it knows that Sacramento is the capital of California. If you go a step further and ask, okay, hey, what was the temperature in Sacramento today? It'll tell you, okay, like high of 73, low of 52. That's in Fahrenheit. And it knows this because, this LLM has been given access to, do a web search, right? And it gets those results that way. But if you ask it, go another layer deeper and ask it, well, okay, what are our best-selling products in Sacramento? It won't know how to respond. And this is because it has not been given access to the context, and data of your business, right? It doesn't know what products you sell, where you sell them, and how well those product sales are performing across different areas. So this is kind of like the context gap that we're seeing right now, especially again with like data use cases and AI. So what happens when you give your AI agents structured and governed context? Well, you get quite a few things. First is reliability. So this is a pretty big one. Probably not surprising, right? So without the structured context, your AI agents are essentially guessing about your data model. They might hallucinate table names, invent joins that simply don't exist, or misunderstand how metrics are calculated for your business. But when you plug them into dbt through the MCP server, they have direct access to your models, your joins, your metric definitions, the lineage, right? It understands all of those dependencies, your job runs. Basically, it follows the exact same source of truth that your data team uses. So that means instead of guessing what the customer's table looks like or how revenue is calculated, the agent just knows. Next would be velocity. So think about how much time your team spend today just explaining context, right? So where does this data live? Why did this job fail? What's the definition of an active user? So with the dbt MCP server, AI can navigate your project independently. It understands your dependencies, knows what models exist, how they relate to each other, and how they're defined. So again, engineers get to spend, less time living in documentation and more time actually building. So with all of this context to your dbt assets, AI becomes more of a self-sufficient collaborator as opposed to something that you have to spend cycles babysitting and validating. Another one is consistency. So when five people ask their AI tools about, revenue metric, you want them to all get the same answer. So with MCP connecting to dbt, every agent, whether it's in Claude, Cursor, or some custom workflow, references the same canonical definitions. And this is made even more powerful when paired with something like dbt semantic layer or semantic layer. And then safety. So this is critical as we move towards more autonomous agents. You don't want an AI assistant with like unfettered access to your warehouse, running arbitrary queries or modifying production models. So the dbt MCP server gives you more like governed guardrails so that your agents work within defined permissions, right? Having read-only access where it needs to be, and then actually being able to take action where you want it to. So again, being able to set something up like it's giving someone like API access instead of like, database credentials to prod. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about how the dbt MCP server actually works. So I'll kick it over to Jason to take us through the rest of it.
We like to consider the MCP server as the way that you connect everything that we do with dbt to everything that you would do in any AI workflow. So what that means is many Snowflake users today use dbt to build, manage, and orchestrate high-quality data workflows on top of Snowflake. And then once you have those assets, there's a huge number of things that you can do with them. when we were building the MCP server, we talked to teams and we wanted to know what AI workflows were going to be most relevant for speeding up their teams and helping them accelerate value. And we found 4 use cases: discover, consume, develop, and operate. With Discover, you can actually use agentic AI systems to get a deeper understanding of what data assets exist in your project and work them into your AI workflows. The best example of this is doing search. How many times have you been looking for a specific model or a definition of a really granular piece of logic? How is marketing attribution managed in my project? These are things where you can go, you can be searching around different tables, you can be reading through the code, and sometimes simple keyword search actually doesn't get you what you need. And using the Discover tools, you can use one of the real superpowers of LLMs, which is they are able to search and understand things that sound similar. So if I'm looking for revenue and it's actually called Rev, I shortened it to Rev or something like that. LLMs are very powerful at being able to actually kind of contextually link that together. And so let's walk through the tools that are available to you in the dbt MCP server. The first tool is just get all models. And what this does is in a workflow where you might be within Claude and you might say, hey, where do I define my revenue? The first thing that Claude is going to do is it's going to go and get all of your models and just get a list of them. This works surprisingly well. You might think that this would blow up your context window, but we find that even in moderately large dbt projects, being able for the model to just say and perform a kind of needle in the haystack search across all of your models is very impactful for then going and determining which models it wants to learn more out of. And this is pretty similar to how a human without a lot of context in the project would operate. They would go, they would look around, and they would say, oh, okay, well, I probably want to look at this revenue model. And then it would go from there and call get model details. And with get model details, then the MCP is able to return the details of your model, things like the source code, the columns, and this is one of the most important one, the descriptions. And by doing that, then the model can perform data discovery. It can go, it can look around your project, and it can start to then navigate the data. So if it finds a model and it's curious, oh, actually, what's upstream of that? It can run get model parents, and it can navigate the DAG and find where logic is defined, how models are connected, and start to build up context on what assets exist in your dbt project. And recently, we just added a new tool, which is get column lineage. So beyond just going and being able to trace back on the model DAG level, you can actually see, okay, so for a given column, how is that actually traced through my dbt project? And so this is useful in data discovery, and particularly also within the development workflow of if you're doing an agentic coding loop and a column gets modified and you want to know what else it has been impacted or changed, bringing the column lineage is able to give that all-important context to the model as it's performing those functions. Next up is consume. And this really maps to the use case that we hear all kinds of different names for it. Talk to your data, an agentic data analyst. This is all about being able to actually go ask in natural language the types of questions that your end consumers are asking of your data. So you can ask questions like, what was my revenue last month? How many users do I have in X location? Anything that the model might need to know that would actually live within your structured data, the consume tools will be able to go and attempt to query it. And so there's 2 primary ways that you can interact with the consumption tools. The first is via a semantic layer. And the tools for the semantic layer are list metrics, get dimensions, and query metrics. And that enables a really natural flow of, if I ask a question, what was my quarterly revenue last year? And it's something that likely should be modeled in the semantic layer, and then it's able to go find a revenue metric and be able to break it out by the dimension of time, date, quarter, and then actually execute that and get that back. And so we find that teams are adopting semantic layers for the set of questions that require the utmost precision and accuracy when they are being responded to. That being said, there's another way to manage the consumption, which is to execute SQL. And the way that this works is rather than going via a predefined semantic layer, the model actually writes a query itself. And this is where the synergies between the different tools come together, where often the data discovery tools will help list out, oh, which models do I need for this? What's the underlying data structure look like? And then you can use the execute SQL tool to actually go in and write a query and return the metrics back. So a common pattern that we are seeing emerging for consumption is to have multiple levels of trust in the queries, where there are some agentic workflows which you want only sitting on top of the semantic layer, but for broader or more freeform analytics use cases, you can do the execute SQL tooling. This is all about writing and updating your dbt projects that sit on top of your data platform like Snowflake. And so over the past year, we have seen in software engineering this huge rise in first Copilot and then agentic development experiences. We're starting to see data teams get those same capabilities given back to them. And so the developed tools are how you integrate dbt development into an agentic loop. So you could ask for a new model to be built. Say you want to take your existing revenue and build a breakout table on top of it where you are breaking it out by a specific dimension, and you want to actually persist that in your dbt project. So you could make the request of the model, and then with the build, compile, list, run, show, and test tools, an agentic coding framework would be able to use those and operate on top of your project. And so those of you that are particularly savvy to agentic workflows might be asking, okay, well, I'm probably doing that in an environment where I already have CLI, the dbt CLI enabled. What is the benefit of layering in the MCP on top? And so what we found is that via the information that's provided about the tools and how they fit into your workflow, even though you technically can run these using agentic workflows, just hitting the CLI, we're seeing superior performance in development use cases when you do layer in the MCP. And I want to highlight a particularly useful tool here, which is the show tool. So if you have ever built a dbt model, you know that a very important part of the iteration process is actually looking at your data. You want to go and make a transformation, write a model, and then see what actually happens. So using the show tool, the model will actually show you what it has done. And so the iteration loop there is, I make a request of the model to build a transformation. It goes, it edits the file, then then runs a dbt build, a dbt test, whatever it needs to do to get the objects instantiated in the database. And then it does a dbt show, and it's able to take a look and see, okay, that data does match the user's request, or it doesn't for any given reason. And this is another one of those virtuous loops that we see by giving just the right tools to the model at just the right time. It's able to substantially improve how it is able to assist you in developing your dbt projects. And then finally, there's operate. So it's one thing to have the correct set of data definitions in place in your dbt project to be able to say, okay, here is the DAG that I want to instantiate into Snowflake. It's another one to actually have that orchestrated and being able to have your jobs running, see if a job fails, make sure that your data is up to date, that it's accurate, that there are no failing jobs. This is an important part of the data practitioner loop. So the operate tools are all about operating on top of your dbt project and making it more efficient. Using the operate tools, you can set up workflows that are able to tell you oh, for my past week's DBT jobs, give me an overview of what happened, and particularly, have there been any failures? What's going on in my DBT project in terms of orchestration? And this also allows you to get back job run artifacts. So if your job fails, you can actually see what failed, why it failed, and this is helpful for dynamic debugging workflows. You can imagine stringing these together into something like a self-remediation pipeline where after a job fails, then you can say, all right, well, why don't you actually go extract the errors, take that back to the develop tools, propose for me a fix. And so the four buckets actually feed into each other and start to enable really interesting and dynamic AI workflows on top of your data sets. Since launching the dbt MCP server over this year, we're seeing that there are over 400 companies making more than 30,000 calls to the dbt MCP server every month. And that number is rising quickly. And we anticipate that this is going to be one of the primary skill sets of the dbt developer, of the analytics engineer, of the data engineer over the coming years, is how do you build the right context into your dbt project, and then how do you orchestrate the tooling using MCP servers to actually operate on top of that data and to hook that into all kinds of agentic workflows. What we've talked about today are the first set of tools that are available here, and you can already string these together into powerful workflows. As time goes on, you should anticipate being able to set up longer time horizon agentic workflows on top. So things that stitch together kind of more steps, higher order goals, and with more comprehensive tooling available from us. There's two ways to get involved with the dbt MCP server. So by virtue of being at build, you might be someone that wants to build this yourself. You might want to build your custom agentic workflows, loop together multiple MCPs and clients, and stitch together dynamic data workflows. That being said, if you're interested in how do I get started with this out of the box to build something that works, that I know is going to be useful, and that is targeted at the set of best practices operating on top of dbt and Snowflake, as determined by the dbt team talking to dozens, if not more, teams about how they are deploying the solutions on top of the MCP, you can use dbt agents. So we have 4 agents that we are just now rolling out. There's the analyst agent, discovery agent, observability agent, and developer agent. And these map to the 4 use cases as described earlier in this presentation. The difference here is rather than hooking up your own workflows, we provide you these out-of-the-box solutions. Honestly, both are great. And if you're interested in trying these out, we look forward to hearing with you and working with all of you, and then continuing to increase both the functionality of these agents, but also the amount of tooling enabled to build your own custom workflows. Okay, so how do you get started with the dbt MCP server? So first of all, the dbt MCP local server is open source, and it is available on GitHub. You can also read the dbt MCP server documentation on our documentation site. And if you haven't joined the dbt community, go to getdbt.com/community and join the tools dbt MCP server. We have a pretty vibrant discussion group there. People are really building out kind of the future of how these AI workflows interact with data in this channel. And it's really exciting to see practitioners pushing forward the forefront of what these workflows look like. So I highly encourage you, if you're a dbt user on top of Snowflake, it's a pattern many teams are starting to adopt. Just connect the MCP to your project, pick one of these 4 use cases, and start playing around. And I think you'll be surprised by the amount of value that you are able to get in a short time. Moving forward, there's many open questions in terms of how we productionize this for the long term, how we scale this to truly global scale workflows, and really this is going to be an effort that takes everyone in the industry pushing it together. So thank you for joining, thank you for trying it out, and please, please, please get in touch as you're trying the MCP server and let us know what is working for you and how you would like to build out your agentic workflows on top of dbt and Snowflake.